Welcome to the Virginia Cooperative Extension Plant Clinic all about veggies. These plant clinics are sponsored by the Virginia Cooperative Extension, a program of Virginia's two land-grant universities, Virginia Tech and Virginia State University. These plant clinics are staffed by Master Gardeners from the Fairfax County Master Gardeners Association. Hello everyone, my name is Becky Durst and I will be your moderator for tonight. I'm joined by Extension Master Gardeners Toshiko Uchiyama, Kathleen Kurthoys, and Gopal Sharma. This evening, we will start our clinic with our bug watch. After that, we'll hear from Toshiko, who will talk about reviewing this season's garden journal. Then Kathleen will share ideas about what early plants you can grow next season, and Gopal will wrap up our presentation with information about early peas and potatoes. So Nancy, this week our bug watch is the praying mantis. I'm always so happy when I find them in my garden. What can you tell us about them?
Well, I don't know how happy you should be. Only one of the 4 species is found in Virginia that's native to the state. It's called the Carolina mantis. The others all come from Asia or Europe. And they're called that, and you can see in the picture on the left, because they hold their front legs as though they're in prayer. Those legs are called raptorial, and they're used for grasping prey. The adults can be grayish, brown, or green, and they have well-developed wings, but you can't see them in either of these pictures. But they're very clumsy flyers, so you're not going to see them in flight. They can be 2 to 3 inches long. They have an elongated thorax, which you can see here on the right, that allows them to turn their neck, their triangular head, and compound eyes in almost any direction. Their natural life cycle is to eat and grow through the summer, and then mate and lay eggs in a stiff, foamy case in the fall. Adults die of old age or freezing, whichever comes first, but the eggs persist over the winter and repeat the cycle the following summer. There's only 1 generation per year. They're ambush predators, sitting or slowly stalking with front legs raised to clamp down on prey. They feed only on living prey, such as moths, crickets, grasshoppers, or flies. They could be beneficial biological controls in the garden. However, they do not discriminate between beneficial and harmful insects. They will eat their siblings, other beneficial insects, butterflies, and pollinators such as bees. Larger species of tropical mantids will also eat other animals, such as lizards, frogs, or hummingbirds. Older mantids can feed on flies, honeybees, crickets, and moths, but they're very territorial and are only found by themselves. They are not effective for the control of aphids, mites, or caterpillars. Their cannibalistic nature limits the number of mantids that can exist. Overall, their impact on the garden and landscape is probably negligible. To encourage the praying mantis, limit pesticide use and provide the dense vegetation they prefer. If you find them fascinating, here's some articles that will give you more information.
That was fantastic. Thank you. I think I have also heard that we can help encourage the mantises by composting our leaves instead of throwing them away to preserve the egg sacs through the winter, or like not trimming our shrubs and stuff right away, giving it a little time in the spring so the egg sacs have a chance to survive.
My information did not indicate that they laid their eggs on leaves. They tended to be on twigs.
On twigs.
And trees. They're very distinctive. They look like foam, like styrofoam that hasn't hardened, like bubbles.
Yeah.
It's sort of black and white or black and gray.
Mm.
And after the eggs are laid, that foam hardens. So it looks sort of like a cocoon.
Okay. And I think also this is one that you can buy in plant nurseries or that sort of thing. You can buy the egg sacs, but you'd probably want to be very careful about what you're purchasing if not all of them are native to our area.
that, yes, make sure that you're getting a Carolina mantis. And that third article from the University of Wisconsin has very detailed information on raising eggs that you've purchased. It is not for the faint of heart. And you need a fairly large property because they will not share
Right.
territory.
Right.
You've got to be able to spread them out so they don't eat each other.
I think I had a friend who homeschooled who hatched them as a like science experiment with her kids. And when they hatched, she was so appalled because she had never had so many eyeballs looking at her all at the same time.
Yeah, they're not, especially this slide. Usually when I see them in my garden, that's, they're
Right.
looking at me like that. I turn my head because something's staring at me.
Well, that was fantastic information. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Our next presenter is Toshiko, who is here to talk to us about your garden journals.
I'm Toshiko Uchiyama, and I'd like to talk about the garden journal today. I started the garden journal when I started for vegetable garden, but that more than 20 years ago. But that time, I didn't put many things seriously because I didn't know gardening so well. So first of all, I can just tell you, why do we keep a garden journal? That's really basic. That the personal source of information that you forget next year, especially vegetables. Also, I try to make record for what I planted in my garden for flowers or bulbs, or put the seed. I forgot where I put. So that is really important to do that. And then since you try to record, you can see more carefully for that your own gardens. So make observations in current garden. Also, another reason is to remind you to do that I started to garden journals. I sometimes to bring some sticky note with, I think I have here, and can show you probably sticky note for that garden journal I'm using here, and then put the sticky note for everything, little sticky note, and then put something like, the eggplant, and then fertilizing tomatoes to twing to that, or green peppers to trim, or these kind of things, and then move around here to, that is a case I don't forget what I need to take care that time. And then last is plan for the future of your garden. I'm doing organic garden, so I try to rotate plants for next years. I can show you that kind of drawing in the couple slides. So I can think about before I start gardening in the spring. So it's kind of a purpose is really meaningful and then useful. And once you are accustomed, it's really kind of a diary kind of things. It's not really details, but it's useful for yourself to do next. And then type of journal to use, that is really what do you want. You can use scratch paper, spiral notebooks, reading binder, commercial journal notebook. There are tons of commercial journal notebooks. So I don't know if you can see, but there's like Etsy or Amazon.com. You can find that so many journal notebook or journal planner. You can just type that one. You can find out hundreds of them. And then also you can find out the digital journal that is application for the smartphone or iPad that you can use these things. So there are many ways you can use it, and then whatever you want that's your choice. What kind of information do we record? That depends on you too. Basically, you can just put the date, weather, planting dates, bloom time, harvest date, pesticide, fertilizer, then plant food. This or pruning. You can put whatever. This is one kind of I don't use, but you can see this is a commercial one, and then that is from the garden magazine's supplement. Once a year I can get these things, and then you can see weather or date or that you can fill in automatically. And then it's up to you, whatever you want, but you need to keep doing. If you have so many detailed stuff, I found out it's tiring because of during that gardening time, especially vegetable, you don't have so much time. You are busy to do gardening outside, and then you come back, you need to do other stuff or harvesting, especially after harvesting vegetables, you don't have time. So you cannot have time to write down. So just the important things for you to, for me, I put that as this is my last year's one day. And I'm sorry, this is not English totally, but I put this is date, and then this is the weather, and then the temperature. Temperature is really important because of try to find out how dry or how wet kind of things, and then put something like you can see it's a lavender pruning. I have lavender in the vegetable garden, so I just put pruning there, and then eggplant for that. That's a different kind of eggplant, and then just to have planting. So these kind of things, and then you can see that there's a lot. I didn't go to the garden every day, so you can see there are a lot of empty spaces. It's okay, just but you can see when you prune, when you got like here, there's I can get the first harvest. And then that is for pruning there. And then I did watering this time and then this time. So something a little bit note for your reminder. So next time you go, you have more clear idea, and then what you can do. And then this is the first time this is my vegetable site planning. I do usually winter, like February or March at least, to draw my site. And then I'm thinking where I should plant and what kind of plant I do. So I have a more clear picture, and then I have a more strategy to plant or prepare for the site. So you can see that there's this left side you cannot see very well. Sorry about this, but there's so basic, not so much, but there's year by year I have more detail and then more vegetable stuff. So you can see more these more flowers I started planting because of pollinators, and that helps for vegetables to be pollinated. These kind of things you can think about. Also, you can develop your site better by this, planning. So this is for me, it's a really better planning for next year, or even during the gardening season, you can think about what you need because of that date. You can see, for instance, when we did plant food, like vegetables, especially like tomatoes or eggplant, they need a constant plant food. So if you don't get so many, but even corns, you need to do that. And if you do properly, like, every week or every 3 weeks, that depends on the season, the time. In the springtime, not so much, but after harvesting or just before harvesting, you need to do constantly to get more harvest, so they can grow really, fast and then better. And then it's easy to forget because you don't remember when you did, kind of things. So for me, this journal really makes me much more productive, and I believe I can get more produce by this. And if you need to learn more for garden journals, you can see many places like here. And this is really simple, but if just like starting a diary, if you can keep 3 days or 4 days or 1 week, you can keep on doing. And then if you try to write too much, it's hard to keep on. So you need to find out the balance, because you have to do gardening itself too.
Thank you, Toshika. That was wonderful. I think a lot of people think garden journaling has to be complicated. And I love that you showed like your handwritten notes and your hand-drawn garden. I do that as well. And I'm really good at keeping a journal in the very beginning and very bad at keeping it towards the end. But the notes at the beginning I find so helpful for when, starting seeds was too late or too early or that sort of thing, or what had good germination or what didn't. So that was fantastic information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Kathleen Kurthoys, who's here to share very timely information about what to plant early next season.
Thank you, Becky. Let's talk about what you can look forward to planting early next year. These will be cool season crops. The first ones that you would seed and plant in the garden year, and they should be planted early enough in the spring so they can complete their full cycle up to harvest before the temperatures get too warm for them. Cool season vegetables are generally grown from seed directly in the garden as soon as the soil can be worked early in the year, and they can be planted when the soil and temperatures are as low as 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Some crops are hardy enough to withstand cold weather without protection, except for maybe a layer of mulch, such as carrots, collards, spinach, turnips, garlic, and onions. The key to growing vegetables is knowing your hardiness zone. And most of central and western Fairfax County is in zone 7A, as you can see on this map. Zone B starts with the eastern third of the county, mostly in the southeastern part, as you can see here. The last killing frost dates are several days earlier in Zone B, where you can start plants by mid-February. This information is based on Virginia's Home Garden Vegetable Planting Guide from Virginia Cooperative Extension, along with Virginia Tech and Virginia State University. This guide is a useful one that shows you what to plant and harvest through each month. It shows when to start seed and transplant seedlings and gives you details on how much seed you need, how many plants you need, an approximate yield to expect for every vegetable. Also, you can find an interactive map to identify your hardiness zone by zip code at USDA Research Service at this website at the bottom of the slide. Plants for the cool season are in 3 basic groups: brassicas, also known as cole crops, leafy greens, and root vegetables. You may hear of some of these plants being set out in the fall in the cool temperatures. They can also be grown in the spring, of course, and you can decide which time is best for you to grow and give crops sufficient time before you need to harvest them. Here's a look at brassicas. They like cool weather, and for some of them, cold weather or even a light frost can enhance their flavor. Here's a couple of examples of brassicas to grow. Broccoli. You can start seeds indoors for early spring transplant or buy your transplants locally. It takes about 4 weeks from seeding them to setting them out in the garden. And after transplanting, they take 2 to 3 months to mature, generally. You want to harvest them before the flowers open up. And cabbage. A cabbage can take temperatures as low as 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Start them inside 4 to 6 weeks before the first date the plants can be set out. Sow the seeds in a cold frame or garden every month to extend their growing span, or the time during which you can harvest cabbage. They're ready 70 to 100 days after transplanting, and they should be harvested when they reach mature size and feel firm, and when the outer leaves of the head begin to curl back. There may be a risk that your cabbage head will split open, and you can reduce that risk by keeping the soil evenly moist and not fertilizing after the head begins to firm up. If the head does split, harvest it and use immediately. A couple other, or 2 or 3 other brassicas to consider growing. Cauliflower, you can start seeds indoors for early spring transplanting after the danger of frost has passed. And they're mature within a wide range, 55 to 120 days from transplanting. So Northern Virginians might want to consider selecting one of the quicker maturing varieties if possible, so that you're harvesting them before long. And they can be harvested before the curd sections begin to separate. Asian greens present all kinds of variety of shapes and textures and flavors. And just a few varieties are listed here. So the maturing time will vary depending on what you've planted. If they are grown in the spring, you can use row covers to help protect them from damage from insects such as the flea beetle. Also, you can help them by clearing out leaf litter in the early winter to reduce the potential for overwintering pests. And slugs are another creature to look out for if you're growing these greens. Kohlrabi can be sown when danger of frost is past. It grows fast and can be grown in cool or warm weather. So you can make several sowings through the season if you like, to extend the time for harvest. The edible portion is the bulb-shaped or enlarged stem above ground, and you'll see maturing in 80 days. Harvest when the bulbs are young and tender and about 2.5 inches in diameter, but no more than that. So now let's look at leafy greens, which will include leaf lettuce, spinach, arugula, mustard, Swiss chard, and collards. A couple of examples of plants to grow in your garden. Leaf lettuce, which is one of the easiest cool season crops to grow. It can take light frost, and you can seed as soon as the soil can be worked in the spring. You can plant it in succession with different varieties that mature at different times to keep that variety going. Use them as soon as the plants are 5 to 10 inches tall, and they should be at their best at that point. In warm weather, leafy vegetables like salad greens and spinach rapidly produce flowers and seeds, which is called bolting. Look for varieties that are slow bolting and heat resistant to extend the growing season. Spinach is a great one. It's not only packed with nutrients, it is hardy to about 15 degrees or less. You can choose to plant it in the fall and overwinter for harvest in late February or March, or you can plant it in the spring and enjoy it for a couple of months before the weather gets too warm. Root crops include carrots, beets, radishes, turnips, rutabaga, salsify. couple of examples of growing these vegetables. Carrots grow from seeds sown in the outdoors since they don't like being transplanted. They need deep soil and can benefit from being grown in a container or a cloth grow bag. Try to keep them free of weeds and thin out the seedlings carefully. They'll be mature in 55 to 80 days and can be harvested when the roots are at least a ½ inch in diameter. Beets can also be sown outside and grown both for their greens and their roots, maturing in 45 to 80 days. Harvest them at 1 to 3 inches in diameter. If roots get larger, they may become woody in texture, so watch out for that. A few more examples of root vegetables. Radishes. You can sow seeds early to mid-spring for a spring harvest. Plant them every couple of weeks until early summer. They mature relatively quickly at 25 to 35 days. Don't overcrowd them or over-fertilize. They are often started with carrots, parsnips, or beets to help mark the rows of those slower growing plants. Harvest radishes when they are 1 to 1½ inches in diameter. Turnips and rutabagas can be sown as seed in early spring for summer harvest and later for fall harvest as well. Turnips mature in 30 to 60 days and rutabagas in 80 to 100 days. They like fertile soil, but they don't like hot, dry weather. Turnip roots may split if there's a dry spell followed by rain, and they may become pithy in texture if over mature, though rutabagas do not do that typically. Harvest turnips when they are 2 to 3 inches in diameter, and rutabagas are larger at 3 to 5 inches. Here's a chart to show recommended start dates for vegetables in Zone 7A, where the last frost is typically April 15 to 25. This information is from the guide mentioned earlier, Virginia's Home Garden Vegetable Planting Guide, and this is adapted from their calendar, which shows the full time span of when you can be growing these. And notice that in early to mid-April, you'll be done planting cauliflower. The last of the cool season crops are all planted by mid to late April. And after that, you're into those warm season crops. This is similar, but for hardiness zone 7B, where the last killing frost dates are several days earlier than in zone 7A. So this is April 5 to 15. In this part of the county, you may want to start planting in mid-February, several days earlier than zone 7A. So all crops would be moved up a few days. By early to mid-April, you are reaching the last frost dates, and then it's time for the warm weather crops to go out. So how do you want to start your plants? Crops that are often grown from seed outside include leaf lettuce, spinach, mustard, root crops like carrots, beets, radishes, parsnips, turnip, and rutabaga. And of course, you can do succession planting. For a sustained harvest, plant a little of each vegetable every 2 weeks or so, if you wish. Crops that can be sown or transplanted include kale, collards, Chinese cabbage, and chard. Transplants from seed started inside can give longer growing plants a chance to mature or lengthen their harvest season. For example, head lettuce and broccoli would not have a good chance to reach their prime harvest stage in most places in Virginia in the spring if they are not given those extra weeks indoors to get a head start, no pun intended. Crops that survive transplanting include broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, chard, Chinese cabbage, and lettuce. Crops that are harder to transplant include carrots, peas, and cucumber. If you would like details on how to grow plants from seed, you can view our presentation from last fall called Starting Fall Plants Indoors from Seed, which has steps and procedures that apply to spring seeding as well. And you can see that link from YouTube at the bottom of this slide. Or you could go to YouTube and search for our All About Veggies presentations, Starting Fall Plants Indoors from Seed. Fall is the time to plan next year's garden so you can prepare the soil, think about how to use your space for next year's vegetables, and draw up a map if needed. Set up a calendar or schedule with last frost date, type of seeds, seed starting date, germination date, and transplant date. As Toshiko mentioned, you want to plan ahead and record what you're planting and when. Order your seeds by January or February. You may want to be starting some plants indoors by mid-February. Be sure to read seed packet instructions. Check for information about when to sow seeds indoors and when to transplant seedlings to the garden. Also note when you need to harden off new plants, gradually bringing plants out to acclimate them to outside temperatures, starting from a few hours at a time and increasing to a whole day. Begin them in a protected spot and progress to a place in the sun. Remember, cool season crops tolerate nighttime low temperatures of around 45 degrees. Here are a couple of resources that can be helpful. Go to the Virginia Cooperative Extension website for publications and educational resources. And check out tips and advice at the Fairfax County Master Gardener website at fairfaxgardening.org. And here's some of the resources used for this presentation. And that planting guide is the first one there at the vt.edu site.
Sonia would like to know, and I think it's a very pertinent question, because of the weather changes or climate changes, should Zone 7A follow Zone B's planting schedule?
I think that this resource is up to date, although you can certainly check online to be sure. The planting guide that I referred to is our consistent reference, and I believe it should be updated if that has changed. But you can also look at your individual seed packets for instructions on when they recommend that seeds go out. And that will, be updated for this particular season and should be a good reference to use. Also, microclimates can have an effect too on when you would want to plant. Some areas of your property might be warmer than other areas.
And I will say, oftentimes I just play the weather. I look at the forecast ahead, I see how we've been trending and just kind of decide to take a chance or not. And sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. But it's, I don't feel like we're quite at the point where we're ready to make a definite shift. But we are definitely shifting a bit. That was fantastic. I get such itchy fingers come like late winter. I just start things inside because I have to. And my husband's like, what are you doing? I'm just like, clear the table, get the grow light. I have to do this now. And so this just makes me so excited to start planning next year already. That was fantastic. So our final presentation tonight is Gopal Sharma, and he'll be talking about early potatoes and peas.
Hello, my name is Gopal Sharma, and I'll be talking about potatoes and peas, specifically the varieties that we'll be able to harvest early in the season. So starting with potatoes, potatoes are an excellent choice for home gardens. They emerge quickly and grow rapidly and are versatile ingredient in all kinds of dishes. So it's definitely something that home gardeners should try it out. However, there are a lot of different varieties to choose from, depending upon the skin and flesh color, the yield, the storage life, cooking characteristics, time to maturity, etc. Especially if you want to store them or versus use them immediately, you would need to consider the time to maturity to grow potatoes. Based on the time taken to mature, there are three broad categories of potato varieties. The early potatoes are the ones that are ready for harvest in about 90 days. And these are primarily for immediate consumption. They are usually smaller than the other varieties. The mid-season potatoes are about 110 to 120 days to harvest, and the late season varieties are over 120 days to harvest. And these are meant primarily for winter storage. No matter what variety you choose, whether it's early, mid-season, or late season, in most cases, the planting is in early spring. If you want a continuous harvest, you may want to choose a mix of early maturing variety and a medium to late maturing variety. For the planting of early potatoes in zone 7, we can start between like March 15th to mid-April. They are half hardy, so they can withstand light frost, but they'll succumb to heavy freezing, and the new shoots especially will be killed by a heavy frost. So if you do plant them and the new shoots start coming up, you may need to provide some protection. They do prefer well-drained soil that is high in organic matter, so you may want to add compost to fertilize them. To seed the potatoes, you can cut them, but then it's recommended to try the cut potatoes and also treat them with elemental sulfur to prevent disease. And you don't want to plant them in very wet soil because a rot and insect injury can also set in. You generally dig rows and plant them 4 to 8 inches deep in trenches with the cut side down. There's a process called chitting, and that can be used for an early start, where seed potatoes can be sprouted indoors at room temperature before you plant them outdoors. The seed or cut potatoes, either way, they all need full sun, at least 8 hours of sun, and it's ideal to plant them when the temperature is about above 45 degrees. For early potatoes, because they don't grow, we don't give them time to grow too large, it is okay to plant them closer, about 9-inch within the rows and 24 to 36 inches between rows. And potatoes can be grown also under black polythene sheets or plastic mulch. Once you have planted them, as the potato plants grow, it's necessary to hill up the soil around the plants up to 6 inches as the stems grow. It's not that you have to do all the hilling in one shot, but as the plants grow, you can go up a couple of inches and then again a couple of inches. This helps keep the tubers that are developing under the soil. They don't turn green, and green potatoes are usually a no-no in dishes. It is necessary to keep the soil cool and moist, but not wet, not waterlogged. So we must water the potatoes when rain is not sufficient. In this case, we must avoid overhead watering to prevent the spread of fungal diseases. It may be necessary to cover the potato with straw mulch to keep the soil cool and also prevent the moisture from drying up quickly. They do help the tubers grow and deter the potato beetles. The tender new potatoes are small and can be harvested starting at about 6 to 8 weeks. They are thin skinned. They can be used whole or for frying and boiling, but these are not usually the storage kind. And while we can start harvesting in about 6 to 8 weeks, we can leave them in the ground for up to 90 days, 3 months. But it is not recommended to leave them in ground for more than 2 to 3 weeks after they have started flowering. Some of the problems in growing potatoes include Like we mentioned earlier, sudden frost or freezing that can cause the potato, the buds and new stems that are growing, they can get damaged. So that can be a problem. Untreated potatoes can lead to early rot. The soil, however, on the other side, when the soil temperatures are in excess of 80 degrees, it will inhibit the tuber development, and that's where it would be necessary to either add mulch or have some mechanism to provide them longer growth if bigger potatoes is what you want. Uneven watering can cause tuber disorders like black heart, cracks, etc. So it's necessary to keep the ground moist. Other common problems include Colorado beetle, the common scab, potato leafhopper, and the potato tube worm. Some of the early varieties include the red Norland, the russet Norcota, the Viking, and the Yukon Gold. Here we see a picture of the Yukon Gold, commonly available. Here are some of the references I used for early potatoes. Remember that early potatoes are called early because they are ready for harvest sooner, but they are smaller compared to, mid-season or late or main season potatoes, and they are usually recommended for immediate use rather than for storage. University of Maryland has great articles on planting early potatoes.
Because of my experiences, potatoes are kind of hard to have a companion with other vegetables. They don't like each other. Potatoes are more likely. So I found many other renters for that vegetable gardens in that my place. They put containers, kind of big containers, and put the potatoes. But for me, I found I put in my flower bed in my house, and people don't realize these are potatoes. You can put the potatoes and then just need, once a while to put more soil underneath. So potatoes are not to show up and then get greener. But that is a kind of one tip I found out really interesting. And I found that is a really nice kind of, it's kind of giggling myself to harvest when they, do.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Next, we come to peas and early peas. Again, it's the same idea that early peas are the ones that are ready for harvest sooner, in about 50 to 55 days, compared to the main season peas, which could be harvested anywhere from 60 to 70, 80 days. Peas are hardy annual cool season crop. They germinate in cool soil and withstand heavy frosts, but the main point is that they allow for an early start for spring gardening. We can sow them directly in the garden, 1 to 3 inches apart from between March 5th to April 5th, when the soil temperature is over 40 degrees. Or we could also pre-germinate certain varieties for earlier harvests. We can plant them in wide rows about 18 inches apart, or we can have double rows so that we can provide support for multiple plants. It is a heavy user of nitrogen. Unlike the other legume plants, we do need to add fertilizer before planting, and the peas themselves do not fix a lot of nitrogen, so it's necessary to add fertilizer. Early peas, 50 to 60 days to harvest from seedling, and the flowering is accelerated by long, cool days. Full sun is required 6+ hours a day, and it is necessary to water the plants to keep them turgid and healthy. However, later in the season, when it becomes hot, the pea plants start withering, and it may be necessary to provide some kind of shade in addition to the sun. The determinate cultivars are about 3 feet high, and they all produce the harvest of around the same time. However, the indeterminate cultivars are over 5 feet and definitely need support. The indeterminate ones usually continue to provide fruits for a longer period over several weeks. Common problems in peas, garden peas, especially early peas, are growth is inhibited by acidic soils where the pH is lower than 6. The seed germination itself can be delayed when the soil temperatures are below 40 degrees, and certain other problems like bacterial blight, powdery mildew, and insect pests, including slugs, etc., could be a problem. The types of peas that can be grown in this area are English or garden peas, different varieties, snap peas, and snow peas. The Oregon giant, snow sweet, Oregon sugar pot 2, sugar heart, etc. are some varieties that can be grown as early peas. Here are two good references for planting peas. One is from University of Maryland and provides great resource on growing peas at home.
Thank you, Gopal. That was some fantastic information. I love growing potatoes, but I love root crops because every time you dig something up, it's like a surprise. It's, it's like a present every time. You never quite know what you're going to get. But the flavor of a fresh potato that you've just dug versus a grocery store potato is just unbelievable. It's so good. So right now we can move on to some questions from our guests this evening. We had a question from Sonia tonight. She wanted to create a new flower bed using a no-dig method and wants to know if now is a good time to prepare the bed or if she should wait until spring. And I think, Nancy, you had a great answer for her.
Yes, I strongly recommend that you go ahead and do it now. Regenerative gardening is the latest thing, and they certainly suggest you start it now. This picture is shown using cardboard. You don't have to pre-kill your grass. You just sort of lay out your bed and cover it with something that will block the grass from growing. You can use several sheets of newspaper. You could use a light cardboard. Don't use something that an appliance has come in that's just too thick. But anything like that will block the sunlight, and you hold it down with, you can use mulch or compost or whatever you plan to use as a growing medium. And that'll hold it down. I did that last fall, a year ago, and I had very good results from it. I tend to grow perennials, and they loved it. I did find, even with all the rain we had, that newspapers seemed to work better for me, but I have a very shady location. So take into account, if you have a lot of sun, you may need cardboard to block the grass and get it ready to go. And then you don't have to dig it. When you're ready to plant, you just poke a hole in it and put your seeds or your plant in it. Do you have any questions, Sonia, or does that answer your question?
Oh, that answers my question. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, if there's not any other questions tonight. So before we wrap up tonight, we've been talking about garden journaling throughout this whole season, as well as our presentation tonight. Some important things you might want to note this week in your garden journal is how the rain affected your garden. We had that nice 5 days of rain. What was it? The very end of September into October. What renovation or rethinking are you doing as you plan for next year? Is that something that you can start now? Are there any weeds starting to create seed heads that you need to remove? And what plants and debris you can clean out now to prevent pests or disease next season? Fall vegetables should all already be in the ground in order to have enough sun and time to produce a fall harvest. And it's time to begin or continue fall cleanup. Also, it's never too early to plan for next season. To find additional resources, including great articles, weed profiles, and more resources, you can visit fairfaxgardening.org. And we've been hosting these plant clinics since the summer of 2020, and all were recorded and are on the VCE-Fairfax County YouTube site. In addition to the virtual plant clinic presentations, you can see all of our Lunch and Learn series and our Zone 7 garden series. There's lots of great speakers and informative topics there for you to get lost in. We still have a lot of wonderful opportunities coming up for you, and we hope to see you at one of our programs again next season. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.